What's up, turtles? Crick here with Black Owl Outdoors, and today I wanted to do a video showing how to get a fire going in wet conditions. It may not look wet today, I can assure you it is. Yesterday and the day before it rained a lot. It's very beautiful out today, but nonetheless things are still very saturated. So I'm going to take you through the process of how I get a fire going and some of the techniques I use in wet conditions with marginal material. So when you're in the forest and you want to have a fire and everything's wet, soaked, there's a few ways you can procure dry wood, and one way is to split a round piece of wood. This is about quartered. You split a round piece of wood down, and then all this interior wood is dry, even if it's been soaking. Now you want to look for wood that's usually standing, dead and standing, as opposed to laying like this. The water will hit it and soak it. If it's like this, it'll more shed. But basically you want to split it open to get the dry wood on the inside. So this is tulip poplar, and I found a big down tree of that, a section of it, and I bucked that down with my silky saw to get manageable sections, probably under a foot, under 12 inches, right around there. And this size of wood, this is going to be like my base, the base I'm going to create on the ground to keep the fire initially off the wet, damp ground. So this is why this is bigger. This piece was only halved. Some of these were quartered, but I kept these big to keep my platform. Now this will allow me also to put my fire on top of this, and this will turn into coal as soon as the fire gets going. So this will create a coal base right away without anything burning on top. That's an important step, very important step in the winter and or wet conditions, to have a platform. You don't necessarily need to split this. Your platform, you could keep round logs, but this way, because it's open and dry wood, my coal base will start sooner than if it weren't split. This next pile over here, this is more of my fuel. Kept this to fuel size. A little bit smaller than this, but still split, probably quartered. Some of this is even damp. On the outside, this is even damp. This is actually pretty marginal, not ideal. Stuff's rotted on the outside that I'm breaking apart, but this inside here is definitely harder, a little nicer wood. And this is a little bit fuel size. Like I said, I'll put this on once I have a decent flame. Now I'm looking at it, I don't know if I even want to put this on until it's hot, until I know the fire is sustained. I wouldn't put this two specific pieces of wood on. But this is my fuel pile. And this isn't, what you see in front of you isn't completely everything I'd have to have it sustained or keep the fire going for a long period of time. This is basically get the fire going and keep it sustained, and that way if you do have more wood, good to go, or you can walk away and process some more wood. Moving over here, this is sort of the kindling, or this is the kindling, which is an important step that is very important, that doesn't get really talked about or given as much emphasis as maybe it could or should. But basically this is going to take that initial flame. Once I have a twig bundle and or I have feather sticks in this instance, that's going to take that flame from that sort of quick burning bundle or feather sticks, and that's going to help sustain that flame even more, to then I can add some fuel on top of it. But this is a very important step, and I use my hatchet to do all of this. The only thing I use my knife for are the feather sticks. I use my hatchet because it's just that much easier. I don't have to worry about potentially damaging the edge of my knife through batoning all of this stuff. I could possibly do a video if people were interested on seeing how I use the hatchet, or more going into depth about splitting wood with a hatchet in the way I used today, because it's pretty safe as long as you keep a few things in mind, and it produces pretty good results. Even to get this kindling down, I could even go a little bit smaller than this. I could use my knife to just jam in the center and kind of split it up a little bit more, but I feel like this is okay. Knowing the conditions, feeling this wood, I feel like this is going to be fine. But again, kindling, very important step. And down here I have feather sticks. A lot of times I'll use a twig bundle, but where I am specifically in the valley bottoms, the hemlocks, I use a lot of the dead hemlock branches, the ends of the branches, but when it's raining and actively raining, there's not a lot of needle or leaf cover from that tree, so those branches or twigs get soaked. There's no cover from them. So what you can do is baton some wood down like I have here, just take a piece like this and go at it with my knife to create some feather sticks. And I'll get an initial flame from my fire kit, which I'll show once I get the fire all going. But feather sticks are nice. I really didn't try to have too many curls. I really wasn't concerned with this curling over on itself too many times. I just wanted something that's going to take a flame and sort of just, you know, get that initial flame and get it roaring. I wasn't really so concerned with having too many curls over itself. And that's basically the setup as I have here. And then you will see what's in my fire kit once I start building the fire. So let's do that right now, and I'll take you through that process and get this fire going. The first part of having a fire is, if you're going to have a fire safely, is you want to scout. If there's already a fire ring with rocks built around it, great, build there. Already there, already been disturbed, do it. But where I am right now, it's not really an option, so I'm going to do it safe. Try to get down to mineral soil as best I can, get all the organics, all that layer of substrate, clear it down to actual dirt. You can see how this is not dry at all. This is really, really damp. So that's where my base comes into play and why it's important. I'm not planning to have a giant fire. This is just a fire for us to get warm, hang out, but still have a hot fire. Once I have my base right here, I also want to build this up a little bit on the back, which is going to act as a rest for me to lay my kindling up. That'll make more sense once I do it. And you know, this step isn't really always necessary to do this when you're making a fire. If you're in perfect conditions or really ideal conditions, you don't need to do all this. I can build a fire right off the ground if it's dry. But because it's wet, keep in mind everything I'm going to be doing, the techniques I'm using, is because I'm dealing with moisture. Feather sticks on there for now. Now I'm going to get into my fire kit. I have a bunch of little goodies in here. But as my fire kit goes, this is actually a tulip tree, the inner bark of the tulip tree. Actually it's reverse wrap cordage of it, but I found out it's a really nice way to store it. I'm going to cut a piece off, break this open, and then this will give me a flame, but not a really hot flame. But then this is like super impregnated cotton, and I sort of flatten it down so it'll catch a flame really quick, and it'll hold a flame. For how small and thin it is, it'll really give me a strong, consistent flame, even in wet conditions and or wind. This will burn really well. I also have a little impregnated piece of pine wood with a lot of pitch in there. Act as the same thing. It'll hold a flame once this catches. It'll hold a flame really well and for an extended period of time. That way I have some time to mess around if things aren't perfect. What I'm going to do now is cut a piece of this off on my base. It's reverse wrap cordage, and you'll see once I start untwisting this, see how it's just coming apart. And then I'm going to go on each side, untwist it some more, expose these fibers. And if it is wet, if it was raining, it is wet out, but if it was actively raining, what you want to do is do this underneath you. If you're hunched over, you want to use your back as a block for the rain or the precipitation if it's snowing. That's coming down. So if it was raining, I'd be huddling and leaning over all of this right now. But I don't need to do that because it's not actively raining. But yesterday it was. I'd used the same method yesterday and it was raining. Everything was soaked. That'll probably be enough, but if conditions aren't ideal or if it's really cold, you need a fire going, you want to give yourself the best chances and opportunities to get a fire going. So you don't want to skimp and you don't want to sort of rush through any part of the process, because with fire, preparation is key when ideals aren't, or excuse me, when conditions aren't ideal. When conditions aren't ideal, or are ideal, geez. If it's perfect out, you don't have to do all this. If it's not, you gotta take your time. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of different reasons you'd want to start a fire and a lot of different uses for a fire. Okay. So here's my striker I keep on me when I'm out in the forest. This isn't in a kit. It's not on my knife sheath. This is actually on my body. Here, this is actually an old keychain I made. The design I wasn't really fond of. I mean, it worked, but I changed a few things size-wise. So what I do is put this either around my belt. My belt can go through here, or I can put it on my belt loop. And then I have a striker attached to it. That way I don't need a knife. I don't need to find any material. This is on my body at all time. Now, the next step is I'm almost ready to get the fire going. Before I even try to get a flame, I'm making sure I have everything where I want it and materials. I sort of planned out how it's going to go down. I'm actually going to try something different today. I'm going to take this. No, I want this one on the bottom. I have about three feather sticks to a degree. This one up here, take out some of these curls. So I want to give myself the best chance. So what I'm going to do here is put my feather sticks sort of like this. Because as we all know, or potentially we all know, that fire loves to climb. It means it needs space between the fuel, and that promotes oxygen, airflow, which in turn creates heat, blah, blah, blah. We get a good fire. So I'm setting this up so that as I light this, I'll be able to have a nice rest for my kindling. And then I do that, then I think I'm going to put a bunch of kindling and then set some stuff on top of the kindling to help promote those flames to reach through the kindling. I think we're going to be good with this. But what I'm going to do now is use this tulip poplar bark to get a flame, to get an initial flame. This does not really keep a hot extended flame. It's just for an initial flame. I'm going to use this then to use actually almost like a candle in a wick to get a really strong flame on this, and then I'm going to put this down here and light my feather sticks. So the process is going to be, I'm going to strike this, get a flame, get this burning. I'm going to light this cotton with wax. This is beeswax. And I could probably, today conditions, I could probably just lift this up and use this tulip bark to get my few feather sticks lit. But this is an assurance policy if it's windy or it's actively raining. Something that will hold a flame, like birch bark works really well for that, things of that nature. But I just want to demonstrate that this step could be very useful, condition depending. So now let's try this. See, that has a nice flame, but I didn't catch it. I'm trying to get this caught. And once this catches, this is dangerously hot and it's going to hold a flame really long. So what I'm going to do is get that under there and not put it out, which I did. It's all right. See this little piece, how long it's holding it? This gives me an insurance policy. Whew. Get this caught up here. Here. Smothered it again. Pick this up. Put my kindling over this. Didn't get that back feather stick lit. Sort of rushed. But that'll all catch. See it smoking. Get a little bit more air. You can add a bunch of kindling at this point, but you just want to make sure you're not blocking airflow from the bowels of the fire. I'm just going to keep adding a bunch because I want this to be sustained. It's wet, I'm cold. Make believe. Like I said before, I'm going to put the last bit of curls on there to sort of promote those flames to reach up where I want them to. Help burn that kindling. And then once I feel comfortable, start adding some fuel, some bigger pieces to that. I can let all this burn, but I'm really happy with the fire as it is now. That's sustained. The base is already on fire and it's turning to coals. One thing I'm critiquing of myself is that initial start of the fire. I probably should have had my feather sticks a little bit nicer, or just thought that out a little bit more, because I really wanted to catch them, sort of light them or get them caught all at once. But that's my only critique of my at this attempt at this specific fire, but it speaks for itself. You know, I was still able to get it to work, even with really wet wood that I need to split down. So if you have any techniques that you think I could use, or found anything you liked about this video, leave a comment. Remember to do all the like, subscribe, and sharing on YouTube. Check us out on blackoutdoors.com. This is Crick signing out with Black Outdoors. Later, turtles.